The African Development Bank signs a $100 million unfunded risk participation agreement with South Africa's fast-run bank, easing the way of securing trade deals with international banks. Hello and welcome to Global Business as we bring you up to speed with the latest developments on the business front. I am Penny Nakaribe live in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. It's 9 p.m. here in East Africa, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome. Also coming up tonight, we continue with our special series on Togo with a look at tech enthusiasts who developed a 3D printer entirely from recycled material. And we meet a farmer in Western Cape in South Africa who has switched the tractor to a tow van and minting much desired cash. The African Development Bank has signed a $100 million unfunded risk participation agreement with South Africa's fast-run bank. The deal will see the two banks share the default risk on a portfolio of eligible trade transactions by African issuing banks in the continent. Most African banks have small capital bases which constrain their ability to secure sizable trade limits from international banks. This facility will essentially support sectors such as industry, services, agribusiness, and manufacturing. It will foster financial sector development, regional integration, and increase government revenue generation, ultimately improving Africa's sustainable economic growth altogether.
If you look around Africa, and just say this year, the countries that have the least level of growth, apart from the ones that suffered from Ebola, are the ones with conflict. And the problem with conflict is it eats away at your economy, it kills your people, it kills your systems. So people think that when the crisis ends, maybe the leader of this rebellion is killed, everything will settle down. It never settles down. Why? Because during the security problems, a whole lot of systems have been killed. People say, oh, but coming back takes time, because what you have destroyed is not just the structures, but you have destroyed something that is even more important, social capital, how people relate to each other. So there's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of abuse, there's a whole lot of things that you need to get back in order to get the economy. So I think peace is really important.
The Central Bank of Kenya will hold its next Monetary Policy Committee meeting on June 9th, 2 months earlier than expected. The bank, which usually holds the meeting once every 3 months, had its last meeting on May 6th. The move comes at a time when the shilling has experienced rapid declines because of a strong dollar, falling foreign exchange from prime sectors such as tourism, and an influx of capital goods. During the last meeting, the bank held the benchmark lending rate at 8.5%. There are speculations that lending rates may rise to tame the shilling. The shilling has weakened 7.8% against the dollar so far this year. It fell 0.3% to 98.15 against the dollar as of 12:29 p.m. on Wednesday. Egypt's cabinet has approved a deal between German Siemens and the state-owned electricity holding company to establish 3 power stations. The projects, which are worth about $8.7 billion, include establishing wind power stations with a power generating capacity of 2,000 megawatts. The German company will also establish a factory to make the blades used in wind farms with a capacity to produce 340 megawatts annually. During an economic development conference held in Egypt, the industrial giant agreed with the Egyptian government to establish a wind power plant and a new wind rotor blade factory. Yasser Hakim has been following these developments for us. He joins me now live from Cairo. Yasser, Egypt has approved this deal with Siemens to establish 3 power plants. How soon does this project get underway?
Well, they are starting immediately. There was a meeting with the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, with the general manager of Siemens International. That shows how important this issue is for Egypt. And they agreed that by summer 2017, already there will be around 4,400 megawatts on the grid working and operating fine. And the rest of the 14,400 megawatts and the 2,000 for the wind will probably take another 2 years. So maybe in 3-4 years, that's a very fast production deadline to get it ready and put on the grid. As opposed to before, a month ago, it should have taken like 6 years. So now they're talking 3 or 4 years to get this whole project done.
And yes, sir, the power plants are said to have a capacity of 14,400 megawatts. How much impact will they have on the national grid?
Oh, it will go a long way into solving Egypt's electricity issues. Egypt consumes around 35,000 megawatts every year, and it only produces 25 megawatts. So there's always need to make an outage or cut electricity in some hours every day, at some days in the week, to be able to give enough electricity to the grid. But those 14,400 will cover the 10,000 that's the deficit, if you can call it, in electricity power needed in Egypt. So, but the problem is that every year Egypt increases its consumption by 5%. So the faster you go, then you are limiting the chances of even more consumption every year. So you're kind of trying to catch up with the increased consumption every year of electricity. So Egypt needs 10,000 megawatts a year to cover the deficit, and this one is like 14,400 megawatts, so it will help much on the grid.
And yes, the power plants are geared more towards wind power as opposed to hydro. So is Egypt looking more at alternative sources of energy as opposed to just hydropower?
Yes, one of the main problems why there's not enough electricity on the power grid is that because Egypt does not have enough gas or petrol to run the power stations. It's very expensive on the budget, on the state budget, and also it's rare. Egypt's production of oil now is totally consumed, so it has to import from other countries, which is more burden on the state budget, so there's not enough to run the power stations. So moving to alternative energy such as solar power or wind power will relieve or will lift the burden off the power grid, of the power stations, and will be cheaper on the long run for the government to run the power stations and to produce electricity. And at the same time, Egypt, as experts say, has the potential to be the second largest producer of solar energy in the world. It has this potential. The beaches, the sun, the weather can give it this strong stance as a producer of solar energy and an exporter as well. It will cover its own consumption and can export as well. So that's why the country is trying to attract investments in solar energy, giving incentives to businessmen who want to establish solar energy projects or wind energy projects side by side with the power station, the electricity power stations.
All right, yes, Hakim, live for us in Cairo. Many thanks, Yasser. Now, Somalis are slowly embracing insurance services since Takaful and Re-Takaful insurance companies, both operating in line with Islamic principles, set up shop in the Horn of Africa nation. Analysts predict a jump in numbers as more people find the need to cover their businesses and property against risks and uncertain loss. Mohamed Jirmogi explains.
In a city where bombs are a constant threat, vehicles burn every so often. But this entity, the first Somali insurance company, has become a way out. The ceiling where businesses reach out to in the times of loss.
This company has become our savior. There are many accidents here. Many times we find ourselves stranded. Sometimes we are made to pay damages even when we suffered loss. All that is behind us now. The company handles these issues and we go on with our businesses.
The first Takaful and Re-Takaful insurance company aims at providing life, car and house insurance. But all these in line with Islamic insurance principles. Takaful and Re-Takaful give car insurance quotes and provide different coverage packages that fit the policyholder's budget.
It's quite simple. We provide this document that states the terms of reference. Then the policyholder fills it Next is the proposal form, which contains info on the specific type of insurance. Then there's this paper for the premium quotation. Could be 3 months or 6 or 1 year. And with that, we have an agreement.
Equitable transfer of the risk of a loss from one entity to another in exchange for payment is a new thing in this city. But people are slowly getting to understand.
We insure vehicles, assets such as houses, businesses and valuables like gold and silver. But we also offer health insurance. People are now slowly getting to understand the importance of insurance.
The idea that there is some form of risk management primarily used to hedge against the risks of uncertain laws is not only new here but must conform with Islamic principles. That is why motor vehicle insurance is the only one that has made real progress so far. Still, its primary use is not only to provide financial protection against physical damage resulting from traffic collisions, but from the clear risk of damage in the event of explosions, which are so very often. Mohammed Hirmogi, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Let's look at the stock markets now, and the main bourses that we track here on Global Business ended the day in the red, except the Nigerian All-Share Index, which gained by 0.17%. Still ahead, hopes for punters in Zimbabwe are dashed after government's decision to stop licensing new betting businesses. And we continue with a special series on Togo with a look at tech enthusiasts who developed a 3D printer entirely from recycled material.
Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you to where the business is happening.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
This is the first year that Africa will have more foreign direct investment than aid. And it's like the tipping point in terms of changing the way the continent is perceived. And I think this summit very much responds to that call. Now, whether it can materialize what is being announced is something that we'll have to check and see whether it happens.
You're watching Global Business. Welcome back. Ghana's annual producer price inflation, PPI, or the average change in price of a basket of goods sold by manufacturers, soared to 19.5% in April. This is from a revised 19.2% year-on-year in March. The numbers were driven mainly by weakening of the local currency and unstable power supply. Ghana began a 3-year aid program worth $918 million with the International Monetary Fund in April to tackle current account deficit, growing public debt, and high inflation. To Zimbabwe now, where prospective sports betting operators hoping to cash in on the growing popularity of the practice may be up in smoke. The government says it will stop licensing new betting houses that are fast becoming a source of income for punters. Here's Farai Mokotuya with the story.
They may not even know the name of the racetrack where these horses are racing, but that hasn't stopped them from staking their money. Times are getting harder here, and a growing number of Zimbabweans are turning to sports betting to make ends meet.
By its nature, betting is not the most wholesome of pastimes, and so it was a bit difficult for us to get people to speak to us directly on camera about their habits. But punters I spoke to privately did tell me they're making good money off this, enough to put food on their tables or supplement their existing incomes. And just a mere look at the number of betting houses like this that have sprouted up across this country shows there is a growing demand for this sort of service.
Horse racing and English football are the most popular, but people will bet on just about anything, with wagers ranging from just $2 to as much as 1,000. But the government now thinks enough's enough. The Home Affairs Ministry plans to stop licensing more sports betting shops over fears the country could become a nation of gamblers. It's a move that promises to put it at odds with bookmakers and punters.
Our industry is not creating enough employment. So the citizens are getting addicted to betting because that's the only source of employment. You can assign moral issues around betting, but for us to start legislating, our ministers and our government should be focusing on the right problems. The problem of generating employment, the problem of investment policies that take away citizens from the issues of chance and betting.
But government is in a quandary, trying to balance the moral vice and the economic benefit. Betting houses enjoy roaring business, making them a source of scarce employment and precious tax revenue. Any move to clamp down on betting could also have an effect on the national purse, which is already strained. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's continue with our series from Togo now, where a group of tech enthusiasts recently gained international recognition for a 3D printer built entirely from recycled material. They're part of our collaborative hub that calls itself Africa's first entirely open space for innovators, and they're hoping to tap into the country's entrepreneurial spirit. Clementine Logan went to find out more.
This is the world's first 3D printer made entirely from scrap. It's the brainchild of the team here at WOLAB, a collaborative space in Togo's capital where tech enthusiasts and entrepreneurs pool resources to lift projects off the ground. Its founder, Sename Kofi, says it's Africa's first truly open hub with a very specific ethos.
Participe d'un mouvement global qu'on appelle le mouvement des makers.
We're part of a global movement called the Makers Movement. The objective is to use what you have in hand, and it encourages independence. If you only have $10, you make do. If you have 100, you use 100. So we haven't sought out government aid. We wanted to show that with the little we have, we can make something great.
Donc on n'a pas cherché spécialement à avoir de l'aide.
This may just look like a lot of rubbish to the untrained eye, but WOLAB's entrepreneurs know exactly what they're looking for to get their projects going.
These cogs can be used in the 3D printer.
Back at the hub, members have the chance to tinker with what it calls low-tech projects and apps, or dabble in one of 5 startups currently in the Silicon Villa incubator. Everything here is a joint effort. 20-year-old Audrey Rhodes is working on a startup which uses social media to advertise local and international events and inform Togo's future generation about the internet's potential.
When I discovered WOLAB, it fitted with my interest in technology. Native was an opportunity for me to develop a startup and to maybe eventually become a Bill Gates. I'd like the government to create more spaces like WOLAB to help other young people develop their ideas.
A modest space like this has helped young people with innovative ideas dream big. They think more hubs around the city will encourage Togo's future generation to tap into its entrepreneurial spirit.
WOLAB a été créé.
WOLAB was created as a space that people can use to transform their city. So what we'd like now is to replicate more spaces like this one in the neighborhood and see if in 5 to 10 years, people here have begun to change their area.
WOLAB is a shining example of the innovative potential in one of Africa's least developed countries. But despite winning various international awards, the lab's 3D printer has attracted little support from the government. In true WOLAB spirit, though, its members are set on using what resources they have to encourage others to come and discover their potential all the same. Clementine Logan, CCTV, Lomé, Togo.
Well, tomorrow we'll take you to an ancient valley in the north of Togo, the first cultural landscape in the world to be declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Well, let's turn now to commodity prices. Gold steadied on Wednesday off the previous day's two-week low as the dollar retreated after its biggest daily rise in 2 years, but remained under pressure from expectations that a U.S. rate increase may come soon. Coming up, we meet a farmer in Western Cape in South Africa who has switched the tractor to a tour van and minting much desired cash.
We want to tell the African story differently. You know, Africa is known from the conflict, hunger, starvation, whatnot, the bad things. Yes, there's that going on, but we also want to project Africa in another light. We want to bring out the positives. If it's in a conflict, if it's in an election, we're able to give a level playing ground. Well, I'm a field reporter or correspondent, if you like. From a young age, I always wanted to know what's happening in the news. I wanted to read newspapers. I was actually reading for my folks the newspapers. I've covered general elections. I've covered conflicts in the entire African continent. I was thrown into the deep end when I got an assignment to go into Somalia. That was quite the experience. I think that was my first conflict zone to cover here at CCTV. Going to Somalia opened up to me the world of war correspondency, and since then I've been able to go to several other places like the Central African Republic. I've been there 3 times. The conflict there is different from what we've had in the past, and we've had experiences where we've been attacked. You have to realize whether you're cut out for this and you want to go ahead with all this. So I can say it's a career that is not for the faint-hearted so far. As soon as I'm given a story to do, that passion, it ignites something in me, and I get excited when I see my package or my production on air, and then I know that I'm actually doing maybe what I was called to do at some point. The only way you can actually highlight some of these issues is through doing what we do. So certainly it's worth the risk, but then again, I keep saying no story is worth my life. I'm Jane Keo. I'm a reporter for CCTV Africa.
Africa is not one country.
And Africa is not one story.
But as Africans, we do share one belief.
What more offensive in a
that whatever the challenge, we will overcome.
CCTV Africa brings you unrivaled coverage.
From the fight against Ebola to the fight for greater freedom.
From the figures seeking your vote to the figures shaping your economy.
This is Guy Henderson reporting from the jungles of East.
And all the reasons to celebrate the diversity of life on this great continent.
Welcome back to Global Business. Tourism is a major income generator for South Africa, and it has the potential to provide more entrepreneurs into the sector. Angelo Kupla has been at Fort Western Cape, where he met a farmer who has changed direction and instead created a culinary adventure combined with guided tours into the mountains in Oudtshoorn area around the Congo Caves.
The Oudtshoorn area is world famous for its scenery, mountain passes and flowers, and tourists travel from around the world to see this floral wonderland. Entrepreneurs are increasingly catering for this market and creating experiences for foreign visitors. This failed farmer changed direction and has created a culinary adventure combined with guided tours into the mountains around the Congo Caves.
Our busiest times of the years will be from October until about end of April. Because it's our summertime, and in the overseas in the European market, or in the European countries, it's cold, and come here for the summertime. And our flowers are also blooming the best time of that time of the year is the best.
For tourists less likely to want to sit in buses, there are adventure experiences, from motorcycling to pedaling to the summit of the Swartberg Pass. It's attracting many people to the area.
I'd say about 90% Europeans, actually mostly international actually, and then the rest South African. So business-wise, it's mostly personalised adventure guiding trips where I've got I custom make the trips for the clients, everything from canyoning, mountain biking, rock climbing, kayaking.
Tourists from around the world flock to this part of the Western Cape for a range of reasons. Most spectacularly, though, is the view. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV on the Swartberg Pass in the Western Cape.
Let's have a look at the currencies now. And South Africa's rand steadied on Wednesday in the face of a global dollar rally after poor domestic data knocked it to two-week lows in the previous session. At 14:50 GMT, the rand was trading at 12.07 to the dollar, little changed from its previous close. And before we go, coming up on Global Business tomorrow, the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank get ready to vote for the next president of the continental lender. They have 8 candidates to pick from, with frontrunners from Cape Verde, Nigeria, Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. We shall have the results and analysis of the bank's performance and its future. And we have details of Uganda reinforcing its capacity to curb the rise in illegal wildlife poaching. The country's tax body is formulating a specialized unit to further tighten its grip, especially at the country's border points. And that's it for this edition of Global Business. To send your feedback to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. You can visit us on Facebook. Our page is CCTV Africa, and you can also stay in touch with Global Business on Twitter using the handle at CCTV News Africa. I am Penina Karibe. Thanks for your company.